Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Lighthouse Sessions. Today, I'm excited. I have my new friend, Tyler Osborne, with me. Tyler, welcome to the show. Why don't you tell my guests just a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Do you want to hear my origin story? Or just wanting me to hop right into exactly what I do?
I want to hear the origin story because
All
I'm
right.
always fascinated.
For sure. So I grew up, I was born and raised in California, Northern California, San Jose to be exact. And honestly, sports saved my life. The reason I kind of say that is because majority of my friends growing up are either no longer living in prison or strung on drugs. So kind of thank God I got away from them. I ended up getting a football scholarship at the University of St. Mary's out in Kansas in 2010. I was always called like the small school NFL combine. And basically what that is if you didn't go to like a Power 5 school, which let's say like the Alabamas, the Tennessees, the Ohio States, where they have like the national combine people watch on TV, they have a smaller one as well for smaller school kids. And I happened to be invited to one of those. Did end up getting drafted in the NFL, kind of had to figure out what to do next. I got my degree in psychology. Originally, I wanted to go ahead and be a marriage counselor. And got married and decided I didn't want to do that. It's kind of how that happened. Still married. We have 4 kids. I got an 18-year-old. I got a 15-year-old. I got a 14-year-old. I got a 12-year-old. Boy, girl is how they were born. And I had to figure out what to do next. And I found that the one reason people were splitting up was because of finances. So I said, okay, if that's the one reason that people were going ahead and splitting up, I should probably go ahead and work in that industry. And I didn't really know how to get into the financial industry or what I was going to necessarily do in it either. I just kind of knew that was what I was kind of being called to do. And I remember I was up late one night praying, and the Lord kind of just spoke to me. It was like, go apply for JP Morgan. I was like, apply for JP Morgan? All right, cool. So I got up and the next day and went ahead and started applying for JP Morgan. It was on a Friday. I started doing this application on a Friday afternoon. And I got to, and all of a sudden, like, there's a bunch of math questions. I was like, math questions on a job application? Like, all right, whatever. And I was kind of getting a little frustrated because, like, it wasn't like, 2 + 2 = 4. It was algebra. I was like, I already graduated college. What the heck am I doing? Like, doing it now? I was so confused. And at that point in time, my sister-in-law was a banker as well at a Capital, what is it called? Not Capital, Star One Credit Union out in Northern California. Anyways, so I asked her, like, did you have to do like a math test when you applied? She's like, no. And I got so frustrated. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I told my wife, let's go to the movies. So we left, went to the movies. Could not remember what the heck I watched so long ago. Ended up coming back home. And at that time, it was probably like 11:30 at night. And I was getting ready to go lay down and go to bed. And the Lord just kind of nudged me again, like, go finish that application. So I got up. I went and finished the application, doing this freaking math test till like maybe 1 a.m. or something like that. And turned it in. So now by that time it's Saturday morning, right? I get a call Tuesday morning from a lady named Jeannie Cox. And Jeannie was super sweet, super nice lady. Hey, how you doing? Is this Tyler Osborne? Saw your application yesterday, looked over it, and I want to set you up for the interview. I was like, okay, cool. I was like, that was a pretty quick turnaround, right? And ended up having to drive out to Mountain View, California, which is, for those who don't know, that's the Silicon Valley, very close to Palo Alto and Los Altos and, San Jose and stuff like that. So a lot of money at the end of the day. Right.
Gorgeous place, but yes, it is campuses from end to end. And it's amazing the concentration of intellect and money in that one little space.
Absolutely. So ended up driving out to Mountain View. And went on an interview, spoke with the branch manager or whatnot, and he liked me. He was like, you know what, can you come back in like an hour? I'd love for you to meet our general manager. I was like, all right, cool. So I came back in an hour and met with the general manager. And honestly, this guy was a complete butthole to me. Like, he was so rude, so mean. All he kept focusing on was, what have you been doing for the last year and a half? Like, you haven't had a job or occupation or anything. I was like, no, I've been training for the NFL. Like, my job was breathe, sleep, eat football. Like, that was what I was doing. And he just couldn't get over the fact about that. That was just all he focused on. It's like, you haven't been working. You got a psychology degree. This doesn't show that you're too ambitious. I was like, I don't know if you understand the magnitude of what I was trying to accomplish. But anyway,
because it's easy to get into the NFL, right?
Yeah, that's what he
Don't
made
pick anyone,
right? And he was just kind of tearing me down, right? And afterwards, I ended up leaving. I was just like, yeah, I guess not gonna work for this company. So I left. And probably about a week later, I got a call from Jeannie. She's like, "Hey, Tyler, how'd it go?" I was like, I don't think I got that job. And I explained the situation, what happened. And she was like, "Oh, well, you know what? Don't worry about him. I'm gonna go ahead and set you up with a whole nother interview outside that guy's district. You don't have to worry about him." I was like, "Okay, cool." So she set me up with another interview. It's called a hiring event for JP Morgan. And I ended up going to like this location in Fremont, California. And I drove out there, and they called it a hiring event, but there's only 3 of us that day that were getting interviewed. So I don't know what the there's only 3
I
of us
like those
day.
odds.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, one of us is gonna get it today, right? Possibly. So anyways, they sit me in a room, and I'm sitting there, and 2 guys walk in, and they're interviewing me. And for the next hour and a half, all we spoke about was football. That's all we talked about. They asked me no questions about anything other than football. And that's what we talked about for the next hour and a half. So I walked out there a little bit more confident, like, well, at least maybe these guys like football compared to the last guy.
Yeah.
Right? And
the other guy seemed to hate football. So there you go.
Yes, absolutely. And ended up leaving out of there, and I felt confident, but they didn't tell me that day that I got anything. So probably about another week later, I get a call from a lady named Vicky, who's at another branch, which was actually in Cupertino, California. And she was like, "Hey, I spoke to, the guy who interviewed me. His name was Eric. She's like, I spoke to Eric, and I'd love to have you on board of the team. Could you just come in so I can meet you and get to know you a little bit better?" I was like, "All right, cool." So I came in, got to know her, and she hired me basically on the spot. And that's how I kind of got my introduction into the financial world. I was working there with her.
And I can't help but think, looking back, that your background in psychology is very helpful in finance. Is that fair?
Yes, it is fair. Absolutely. When I first started working in the industry of finances, I didn't really even relate it until I started to realize, like, man, I'm really good at getting to know people and understanding the ways that they think about money compared to just doing the math when it comes to things, or just creating a budget, or telling them to get in these type of instruments when it comes to investments. So psychology does play a huge role, larger than I ever expected, because a lot of times most people, when they get a degree in something, they probably don't even work in that field. Like, and myself, I was like, man, I got a psychology degree. I don't even work in psychology. But I guess technically, yes, I definitely do use it.
I love it. Now you've had a career, and now you're pivoting. So you have a podcast, and I believe you have a movement you're working on. I seem to recall you help young entrepreneurs. Is that fair?
Yes, for sure. I do help young entrepreneurs. And what I do particularly is kind of help them get into the line of field that I still do work in, which is in the wealth and financial world. So what I do is wealth infrastructure and capital strategy for entrepreneurs, families, professional athletes, and business owners as well. So a lot of times there are people who want to get into being an entrepreneur that don't know exactly what kind of field they want to be in, but they do know they want to go ahead and be their own boss. So I'm always looking for good people that do want to work in the world of finances, that I can mentor, train, coach, develop them on how they can go ahead and be a business owner within this field.
I love that. So how did you pivot from working at JP Morgan to what you're doing today? What was the defining turning point?
Great question. So I remember helping someone do about a $500,000 rollover from an old 401k/IRA. And at that point in time, I was 22 years old. And I did that transaction, and I made about $2,000 in 1 hour. And I was fired up. Like, oh my goodness, like, this is so freaking cool. Or I made $2,000 in an hour. Like, I could do it. Yeah, I could do this. And then I went home and did my research and found out that 2,000 would have been 30,000 if I would have had my own company. Jeff, I'm from the hood. Okay. I'm born and raised in the hood. I told you I came from a rough background. My little brother was shot 5 times and lived. A very good friend of mine growing up was shot 12 times and lived, but he's unfortunately in prison now for basically the rest of his life. So I come from a rough background. So me getting shorted 28,000 just didn't sit right with me. You know what I mean? I wanted to fight somebody,
Yeah.
I know some people that could have done something to some people, but obviously wouldn't go down that route or that road. So I figured, like, you know what, if that's what they're going to be paying me, and shorting me that type of money, I got to figure out a way to do this on my own. And I ended up meeting somebody that decided, and this is why I pour back into people, that decide he'd mentor, train me, and coach me on what I could do to go ahead and own my own firm. And I ended up leaving JP Morgan and basically being like attached to this guy's hip, and just did everything he told me to do for the next year. And then the next year I actually had my own firm.
Wow. Well, that's an exciting twist. I think I see mentorship as a moral obligation. I know there's a lot of people say, oh, no. And I'm not a self-made man. And anybody who says I'm self-made, I don't believe you.
Yeah,
Because we've all had a handout from somebody. And I think being a mentor is, first of all, it's a great way to give back. But also, I can't mentor somebody without gaining in something. And even if it's just the new way of looking at the world, because they haven't been jaded or they haven't learned, no, you can't do this, they'll ask why not. And I love working with proteges because it's so rewarding to see, it's like watching a child learning how to walk. Those first steps are so exciting.
Yes, and you never forget it. You never forget it as well. And I 1,000% agree. I think givers gain, right? I truly believe givers gain. And there's just always something about paying it forward or giving back to somebody because you know that someone helped you get to where you're at. And that's honestly a lot of how I live my life. Is I want to pour back into other people. Although I do finances and I love helping people when it comes to their finances. Like, my passion is empowering the youth, inspiring the next generation. So although I have my podcast, as you mentioned earlier, and I do finances, my huge thing is publicly speaking in the school systems, colleges and high schools and things like that, and pouring into the next generation, let them know that where they're at doesn't have to be where they're going to be stuck at for the rest of their life.
Well, and I think when you look at disadvantaged neighborhoods, all they see is what's immediately around them. It's almost impossible to break out of that cycle. So I think having you as a beacon and as hope, I think, is very powerful.
I 1,000% agree. I wish that more schools would pour into something like that, pour into helping the youth see that there is a better way out of where they're at, because a lot of time impoverished communities, they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And a lot of times the cycle repeats because they are impoverished. And if you are impoverished, what ends up happening is you get desperate. And then when you get desperate, you go ahead and do things that you kind of put you out of your character a lot of times.
Well, and unfortunately, a lot of those desperate moments become permanent barriers to the future you want. So I think so you and I, we are going to be deep friends. I know this already, my friend, because I am obsessed with how do we help the next generation. And I also believe that entrepreneurs are uniquely equipped to solve the problems of the world. Now, full and fair disclosure, we cause some of the problems. Once you get into corruption and greed, we tend to, environmental, we'll just dump this waste here, nobody will notice. But really, truly, and you use the phrase givers gain, which tells me 1,000% that you and I are going to be friends. I'm obsessed with Dr. Meisner and Bob Berg's John David Mann's The Go-Giver. I don't do business with people who don't believe in either givers gain, go-giver, that mindset. But I also think as entrepreneurs, we owe it to the next generation to mentor them.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty sure it's a, I don't want to say corny, but it's a well-known saying, the kids are the future. Right. But it's the truth, though. It really is the truth. So if we help them in their mindset as a young person and teach them how to develop into being able to solve problems, because at the end of the day, that's what business is about. It's about being a problem solver, not creating the problems, which unfortunately some of us do, but being problem solvers. So we could teach them how to properly solve problems and help them develop into wanting to be more. I think we're on the right track.
I love it. And by the way, that's a great Whitney Houston song as well. That's going to go through my head for the rest of the day. So yay. But I think it's fascinating. I have a lot of discussions about this because first and foremost, I'm a father.
Okay.
My kids are everything to me. I have two boys. And this year I actually had the aha moment. I spend all kinds of time and energy mentoring other people. I coach people for a living. And so last year I actually started actively mentoring my sons.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because my wife is all about they're going to grow up, get jobs and whatever. And I'm like, they're my kids. They're not going to be happy in a job. But the reality is I invented something I call car coaching.
Okay.
So when I'm driving them to something, we talk about a business problem.
Mm.
And it is amazing the insights. My youngest, he's 13. He's got some keen insights. My 17-year-old, keen insights. And somebody said to me the other day, oh, my son's too young to be an entrepreneur. And I'm like, define too young, because this summer, so my boys and I, we always do a project for the summer because I work from home. They're going to be home.
Mm.
So the natural is they can sit and rot their brain with video games, or we can do something productive. So their homework this year is they're going to each start a business.
I love that. You're already teaching them for one, you're mentoring them at a young age on how to go ahead and be an entrepreneur. And I don't think there's any such thing as being too young to be an entrepreneur. At least, like, you might be too young to be a gun owner or something like that, but not but
Too
not
young to vote.
yeah, too young to stuff like that, but absolutely not too young to be an entrepreneur, to go ahead and establish a way to set up a business and eventually create capital from it as well. Like, that's awesome that you're doing that. And I love the car coaching. I really do. I love that, because we can be in a car for, it doesn't matter if it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, whatever. But if we're talking about something that's going to be productive and help them throughout their life, they're going to remember that and then pass it on to their children. So what I love is that, for one, you're teaching them values and structure that will stick with them for the rest of their life, that they'll be able to pass on to their children as well. Because a lot of times when people think legacy, they think money. No. There's so much more than that. There's so much more. It's the values, the thought process, how we make decisions, how we think, that really shapes and forms our children. And just on that note, like, my oldest son, he turned 18 back on February 22nd. And for his birthday, we did something. We had a party, all that cool stuff. But I wrote him 18 letters talking about the memories, where I came from, where he came from, how he was in the journey, giving him life principles that will help him for the rest of his life, and really just poured into him on how I think of him as a father. Right. And I think that, for one, will do so much more for him in his life, because I'm talking about, like, you name it, I'm probably talking about him in these 18 letters. Like,
I love that. And honestly, that's the aha moment. Is everybody says all family's important, but then they're never around, or they're too busy. And I can't get excited about anything that takes me away from, and for the record, when they were younger, I traveled a lot. So my firstborn, I missed pretty much the first 2 years of his life. My youngest, he's not known life without dad working from home.
mm-hmm.
And it's like, why wouldn't I invest? My legacy is those two.
Yes.
And we have a repeated saying in our household. I'm a fan of the quote, if I've seen further, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants.
Mm.
And the aha moment was, my boys, I grew up on a farm. I knew I could tell you everything about crop cycles and things like that. At the time when I went into business, I didn't see the value. I didn't realize it, but I was an entrepreneur at an early age.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to give my boys that head start, that this is the world of business. And one of the things that fascinates me is that wealthy families, they teach their kids about wealth.
Yes, they do.
And unfortunately, poor families teach kids about scarcity.
This is true.
And I cringe when people say, oh, I just got a job, I'm making minimum wage. And it's like, oh, that's a hard life. Like,
Yes, I agree 1,000%. Proverbs 13:22 says this: a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children.
Yeah.
And me want to be a good man, obviously. I want to leave an inheritance not just for my kids, but for their kids as well. And that's not just money, that's values that we're teaching as well. That's morals, that's character, that's proper decision making. And I just think that you can't be influential in all of that if you don't spend time.
Yeah.
Right. And time is by far, in my opinion, the most valuable asset. I can never get it back. I can't make more of it. I can't produce any more of it. I can always get more money. I can always get that stuff, but you can never get more time back. So I'm huge on, like you said, when it comes to spending time with my family. Like I work out every morning about 6 a.m. and 2 of my kids come with me. My 2 oldest kids come with me every morning to the gym. Monday through Saturday, they're with me in the gym. All right, so I'm spending time with them. And then my 2 youngest, we're spending times in different ways as well. And then Sunday nights, we have Bible study as a family. So we're spending a lot of time together. And then Saturdays is family game night. We're doing some type of board game or we're just doing stuff together. And it's not just like, I'm like, okay, it's just me and my 4, no more. Like, no. Like for my son's birthday, we went ahead and had like a game night, but we're playing minute to win it games, but we brought his friends in, and all my kids brought their friends in. So we're doing minute to win it games. It's getting intense. It's getting loud. It's hyper. It's fun. And, then people want to stay the night and all that cool stuff, but it's about spending time, because those are the memories I want to build. I want them when I'm not here, when they're like, what was my father about? Who was he? Was he around? I don't want to just be a father who provided. I want to be a father who was present.
Yeah. And I think that's a huge thing, is if you can be present, because a lot of people will be physically present. I cringe when I see families. We have a rule: no technology if we go out for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And I cringe when I see families, everybody's got their phones up, and it's like, why did you bother? You could have got takeout.
You sure could have. I'm with you, dude. I say that at the dinner table, when we're eating dinner as a family, when we're going out to a restaurant, like, put the phones away. Like, it is like, we're here for you wanting interaction, so let's have it together.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I think, and I want your take on this, but I believe that curiosity is one of the most fundamental things you need to be an entrepreneur. And so I challenge them. I say, what are you curious about? Why do you think this is? And, for me to see them being curious brings a tear to my eye, because when I see a lot of people, they're not curious. They're just going about their day. They're not even present in their own lives, let alone the lives around them.
Yeah, I agree. I think curiosity creates more questions. And questions, typically, you're looking for something. You're looking for an answer to something. So if you're doing something right now, and you're not curious about anything, you're probably just living a life in which you're in survival and not really living. Dr. Martin Luther King said this. He said most men and women in our society, they die between the ages of 18 to 25. But we don't get around burying them to the late 60s, 70s, and 80s. And when I heard that, I was like, what does that mean? Well, what it means is people are just surviving. They're no longer living and dreaming and want to do something bigger or better and help other people and do something for the communities and things like that. But why do our dreams die out so early at such a young age? And you have to be curious about things. You have to strive to want to become a better person and things like that. I agree, man. I love that.
You and I are going to have some other conversations. This is going to be fun. Now, let's talk about what you do with your mentoring. So, first of all, let's talk about the podcast for a minute. What's it called again? Money
Master Podcast.
Okay. Yeah. Now, I got to tell you something. You'll love this. I grew up, I was raised Roman Catholic, and I, as a child, heard the phrase, money is the root of all evil. Mm-hmm. And that caused all kinds of limiting beliefs for years and years, decades. And then I looked it up as an adult, and I went, oh, the love of money.
So highly misquoted.
That is a critical detail.
Yeah, so, it's a huge detail.
It's amazing how one word can change. And So let's talk about your podcast. Who is the audience for it, and who are your favorite type of guest?
Yeah, so the audience for is honestly anyone who just wants to learn more about their finances, whether it be personal or business, as well as being able to listen to it from a perspective of entrepreneurs. I interview mainly a lot of entrepreneurs and professional athletes. To be a lot of people that I interview on my podcast, and a lot of times they're giving their perspective of where they came from, how they got to where they're at now, and their vision for where they want to go. And when people come in and listen to the podcast, it's typically very inspiring. That's my main thing I want to do from it, is inspire people to want to go ahead and do better for themselves, especially when it comes to finances and money. A lot of time it's limiting beliefs that hold us back. So what we're trying to do is break through those stigmas of those limiting beliefs. And then when you come onto the podcast, you listen, you learn. You can also go to the website and have access to a free course that I have on there as well. A free course that can teach you about, how to budget and how to get out of debt and how to properly invest and things like that. So so that's the podcast.
I love it. And I want to point out something that I struggled with for years. The problem with limiting beliefs is you're blind to the fact you have them. So
Yeah.
I'm guessing you help people identify those beliefs and find more empowering ones. Is that fair?
Absolutely. So what happens is a limiting belief typically is a lie. That's usually what it is. It's some type of lie that we interpreted and it became a belief system of ours. So we have to first identify what that lie is and then replace it with the truth. Okay. So the longest time I've always heard, well, money doesn't grow on trees. Well, how do they print?
Literally, isn't that the source of money is paper?
Right. So when I used to hear a lot of time, and people, it's hard to get money. Why are we accepting these as truths? That might have been something that happened to that person, but that doesn't have to be my truth. I don't have to go ahead and accept that belief. And a lot of times we have these limited beliefs that end up hurting us from going ahead and moving further in the future. And like you mentioned, the scripture, as far as the misquoted one, when people say money is the root of all evil, and it is the love of money is the root of all evil. And what that means is that you can't love money more than you love God.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people who are in desperate situations, all they think about is money, 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 money. And they put that before God. And then that's when you get into situations which you don't want to be in.
I love that. And honestly, I think I look at a lot of things, the lies we learn. And by the way, I'm a neuroscience nerd. I love studying human development.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the lies we internalize, we heard between the ages of 3 and 8.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, that stuff sticks with us until we're adults. And at that point, we can either face them and challenge them and come into the truth, or we stay in the darkness of the lies. And one thing I find fascinating is people will choose to stay in the dark because they're afraid of walking through hell to get to the other side. And
Yes.
a friend of mine has a great quote I steal all the time. He says, everybody wants to get to heaven, but nobody wants to die first.
This is so true. It's like Christians want to go to heaven, but they don't want to die.
And honestly, that applies on our earthly existence, because if we're not willing to let go of ourselves and find that greater truth, we have died. And as you said, we just haven't been buried yet. So
yeah, absolutely. And then you mentioned that the beliefs that we have are gained. I believe it's arrested development, right? So what happens is these belief systems that we were created at such a young age end up arresting us and holding us back from developing into something further and greater. So a lot of times we have to figure out what those beliefs are, or what trauma we went through that formed that belief, and then overcome that to go ahead and break further and move further.
Well, and the funny thing is, so first of all, if somebody said gold doesn't grow on trees, I could buy that.
I can get that. I'm with that.
But literally, you just need a shovel and you can get it. But the thing I'm thinking of is, when I meet a lot of entrepreneurs, they actually have a different limiting belief. And I want to hear if you hear this. A lot of them think money is easy to get. What they struggle with is it's hard to keep.
Oh, yes. 1,000%. I had an episode on my podcast talking about why high income earners are still broke, because there are so many people that I've come across that make good money, but they have nothing to save for it. Like they don't have anything saved up. They on paper they're not broke, but they really are.
Yeah.
Right? They really are. And what happens is there's something called lifestyle creep that a lot of
Yep.
people that are entrepreneurs tend to end up falling into. Meaning, like, I went from making this dollar amount to this dollar amount, and instead of saving the extras that they had, they just increased their lifestyle. Got to upgrade on the home, got to upgrade on their cars, got to upgrade, and now they're eating out more. They're no longer cooking it from home. So they're doing so many different things that they're wasting more money than they are actually saving and investing. And what I talk about is, if you can go ahead and even if it's from 3 to 5 years of delay gratification on increasing your lifestyle, you could have so much wealth during that time period in which you went ahead and just delayed it. But unfortunately, a lot of people, and here's the thing, we're not taught these principles growing up as kids. We get money, we spend it. We get money, you spend it. I got $1, I'm gonna go get some candy. So we're not taught saving principles typically, especially in America. Like, it's just,
Yeah.
we're the land of the overspenders.
The land of the consumer and home of the broke. Is that?
Yeah, that sounds about right. That definitely sounds about right. We buy things that we can't afford with money that we do not have.
Yeah, and I'm fascinated because I actually had some clients in the past that had won lottery.
Wow.
And it was fascinating because most of them, there's probably 3 in my world, all of them ended up worse off than before they'd won the lottery, because first things first, they inherited this windfall. They didn't earn it. They didn't know how to keep it, whatever. And then all of a sudden, aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors, everybody had a can't miss business idea. And they're like, oh, I got money. And it was just amazing that they'd use the lottery winnings to buy the big house, and then they get a mortgage on the house to finance a business. And because they didn't know anything about the business would fail, and then the bank would take the house. And I saw some lives ruined over windfalls, and it was all about identity and beliefs.
That is so true. And also too, when it comes to money, it's just an amplifier of who you are. So if before money, a person they weren't good with it, and they were a bad person, did different things, this and that, when they get more of it, they're just going to increase of what they already were. So all it is, money is just a tool, and it just amplifies who you are. If you were a great person before money, you can do some great things with it when you have it. But also, to go on with what you're saying about the guys or people that you knew that were lottery winners, a lot of times what happens too is they came into money, and since they don't know how to use it, like you said, it hurts them. It's like giving a baby a machine gun.
Yeah.
Like, you can't do that. They're just going to harm themselves. So a person who knows nothing about money, you give them a bunch of it, and they weren't good with the little bit that they had before, they're going to be just more destructive with a lot of it.
Yeah.
And that's what we see a lot of times.
You and I are so closely aligned. I use the framework of, it's like giving a puppy a flamethrower, but same concept.
Yeah.
It doesn't end well for anybody.
Exactly.
So clearly we need examples. All right. Well, Tyler, I could talk to you all day. You were a fascinating guy. Where can people go to connect with you, learn more about what you do, and support your work in general?
Absolutely. You can go to my website, moneymasternation.com. You can go ahead and go there. There's ways you can get a hold of me. You can listen to the podcast. You get access to the free course through the website as well. And then you can find me on Instagram, moneymaster408 on Instagram as well.
Is there 407 other money masters? I would see that on license plates. I'm like, there's 407 before you. Not kidding.
That's the area code of where I'm from.
You can take the boy out of the hood, but you can't take the hood out of the boy. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Well, Tyler, it was my absolute joy to have you, and I want to thank you for hanging out and being on the show.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much.